There is a little bit of a significance to the fact that we just started the second book of Torah. The first book of Torah is basically a list of names. When you boil it right down, that's what it is. We're introduced to Adam, to Noach, Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, his children who are the children of Israel. End of book. So what do we know from the first book of the Torah? We know who we are. We know who. We know who God is going to work with to make the world perfect, because that's the purpose. Now that we know who, the next thing we need to know is where. Location, location, location. Where is this perfection, this godliness going to take place? The answer is not in heaven, on earth. And not in the most heavenly part of earth, like your faith, your mind, your heart. No. In the physical deeds with the physical substances, the money that you use for tzedakah, the wax you use for your Shabbos candle, the water you use for your mikvah, that's where godliness happens. So how does the second book begin? It begins with Moshe. Until now, we had patriarchs, matriarchs. Now, all of a sudden, we have a teacher. So it's almost like the first thing a child learns is who is mommy and who is tati. That's your patriarchs, your matriarchs. That's the first book of Torah. Who are your parents? Who are your ancestors? Whose child are you? That's the first thing a baby learns. But now we're not babies anymore. In the second book of Torah, we're starting school. We're going to Cheder. So now we have a teacher. Moshe is our teacher. So we've made great progress. We've gone from being babies to being students. And what do we learn when we go to a good school? We learn what our contribution is. As babies, we are only takers. As a student, you learn how to be a giver, how to make a difference, how to recognize what is essential from non-essential. Like that story about the previous Rabbi who asked his father why we have two eyes. I think we've mentioned the story before. Yes. We have two eyes so that we can see three-dimensional. So you can tell the difference between the importance and significance of a friend and the shallowness and pettiness of candy. What we need now, more than ever before, is the ability to see three-dimensional. We got to see past the surface. We got to see the deep, not the superficial. Because the superficial is very discouraging and distasteful.